I'd like to welcome everybody to the CERS Board of Trustees regular meeting for September 9th. Michael, you doing or Eric, whoever's doing the opening statement, please.
All right. This is a regular meeting of the County Employees Retirement System Board of Trustees. This meeting is being broadcast via video teleconference pursuant to KRS 61826 and may be viewed by the public at the Kentucky Public Pensions Authority offices located at 1260 Louisville Road in Frankfort, Kentucky. It is also being broadcast to the public live via Facebook. If you are speaking and are not appearing by video, please identify yourself before talking. If the video or audio broadcast is interrupted, we will attempt to reestablish a connection. If a connection cannot be reestablished within 30 minutes, the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled to a later date.
Eric, thank you. Sheriff, you could take the roll, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Cheatham?
Here.
Dr. Carver?
Here.
Mr. Foster?
Here.
Mr. Fulkerson?
Here.
Dr. Hackbart? Dr. Milkman? Mr. O'Mara? Ms. Pendergrass? And Mr. Powell?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. Being a quorum present, we'll go ahead and move forward. Sherry, I understand we have some public comments to read.
Yes, we received one public comment for this meeting. This is coming in from an Andrew Parrish, and he writes as follows. Good morning. I hope you all are doing well, and I appreciate your commitment to the Commonwealth and the ones you serve. I would like to briefly introduce myself. My name is A.J. Parrish, and I currently serve as the night shift sergeant for the Paducah Police Department, and am under the Tier 3 system as I joined the force in May of 2014. I am submitting this comment to you all because I want to bring light to an issue with retention among law enforcement that you are likely all too familiar with. While this issue is affecting agencies nationwide, I want to focus on our issue specifically here in Kentucky. Currently, the Commonwealth offers 3 tiers for retirement, but I will focus on the one that is currently in effect as of January 1, 2014, which is Tier 3. Essentially, peace officers are no longer under a pension-style retirement, but rather a 401k. Unlike other retirement tiers prior to 2014, under Tier 3, the participant has the option to leave law enforcement and take their 401k balance with them. Specifically, they are vested after 60 months or 5 years of employment. What this means is that instead of staying in law enforcement for 25 years, officers can now leave law enforcement at 5 years of service and go work in the private sector with their 401k. This is causing a massive strain on law enforcement agencies across the Commonwealth to retain seasoned veteran officers. Instead, agencies are now forced to cycle through hiring young officers, send them to the academy to get trained, and then hope that they will stay faithful to law enforcement for 25 years. While this seems grim, I do have a solution to this issue. In January, House Bill 143 was introduced, which would afford Tier 3 participants the option of going to Tier 2. This would greatly benefit the safety and security of the communities within our Commonwealth by retaining law enforcement professionals for 25 years to reach full retirement under the pension system. I humbly request that you take some time to fully research this issue and support the efforts to afford us the opportunity to go from Tier 3 retirement system to Tier 2. I would be happy to discuss this issue further and can be reached via email or phone at 270-206-1791. Again, thank you for your time and support in this matter. Thank you. Mr. Cheatham, you're muted.
Sorry, Sherry. I do want to point out, because I know a lot of times we'll get comments that are read into the record, and we do, I just want for those that are listening, and this gentleman, Mr. Parrish, I want him to be aware that we do take your comments seriously. We look at them. One of the things that we try to do is reach out and respond to you directly. And Ed, if you don't mind, to put your agenda to reach out to Mr. Parrish and answer any questions he has, and let him know where we stand on issues like this. I just don't want it to look like we get these comments and never address them. So with that, I'm going to move into just a couple of updates. On behalf of the board, I do want to send out our condolences to Betty Pendergrass and her family for the loss of her father. That's why Betty's not with us today, for those that weren't aware of that. So, we certainly want to keep her and her family, like I said, in our thoughts and prayers, because anytime you lose a parent, it's tough. I don't care how old or how young you are. It's always a tough thing to go through. So with that, there are a lot of different moving pieces going on right now. I'm not, we've got a pretty long meeting, so I'm not going to get in depth with some of the other issues that Ed and I have been working on, but on a positive, they are all positive. So we'll update you on those things here shortly. With that, I'm going to go into the next item on the agenda, the CERS Board of Election ballot. Kristen, if you don't mind, give us an update and let us know what you need us to do on our end.
I will do that. Good afternoon, everyone. Sherry, if you go to page 10.
Kristen, I'm sorry, I skipped over minutes. I'm not sure where I did that, but I skipped over minutes. You had distributed in your packets minutes for the June 10th and the July 17th meeting of the CERS board. Are there any changes? I'm going to take each one of them individually. The June 10th, are there any changes or additions, deletions that need to be made? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept as presented.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Ayes have it. Second set of minutes were for the July the 17th meeting. Are there any additions, changes, or deletions that need to be made to those?
Motion approved as written.
Second.
Got a motion, Jerry, and a second by JT, I believe. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Ayes have it. Minutes are accepted as presented. Sorry, Kristen, I get ahead of myself from time to time.
Oh, no problem. So if you look at page 10, that I've given a summary of just how the election process works. But we received applications for the upcoming CERS election. Those applications were due July 31st. So at this meeting, we need the board to, it's actually two types of votes. So the first thing we are going to do is we're going to go through, and it's a roll call vote for each trustee to select which individuals they would like to place on the ballot from the applications that were provided. Each trustee has to vote for at least one candidate per open position, but can vote for up to 3 for each open position. And then after we've done that, and I'll announce which candidates have enough votes to be on the ballot. And at that point, we will need the board to vote to make that the official ballot. So if there's no questions, Sherry will have you do a roll call of each trustee for them to vote of the applications received, which ones they would like to place on the ballot.
Okay, if we are ready, Mr. Cheatham.
Aye.
So for this first vote, we actually need the names of the individuals you would like to place on the ballot. For this particular situation, we actually can place up to 6 non-hazardous candidates and 3 hazardous candidates, which is the exact number of applications we received. So rather than naming each individual, if you would like to just vote for everyone, you could indicate you would like to place every candidate who submitted an application on the ballot.
I'll make a motion that I'll vote aye to place all the members who made application onto the ballot.
Okay. Dr. Carver?
I would like to make a motion to put everyone who made an application to be on the ballot.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Foster?
I concur. I think all names should be placed on the ballot.
Thank you. Mr. Fulkerson?
I'm voting for all.
Thank you. And Mr. Powell?
I'm voting for all.
Thank you.
So given that information, now we would just need a motion to wrap that up to say that all candidates who received at least one vote be placed on the official ballot.
I'll make a motion. Go ahead, Jerry.
I'll make that motion as worded by Kristen.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. All in favor, placing all members who received one vote onto the ballot signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Ayes have it.
That's all I need for the ballot. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is Joint Retiree Health Plan Committee report. Jerry?
Yes, once, let me grab my papers here real quick. We just had our last retiree health plan committee on the 3rd. That this meeting was the one that dealt with selecting the non-Medicare eligible plans and the Medicare plans. If there's no objections, I think probably the simplest way for us to accomplish this is I'll go over each plan and then we'll just do a blanket vote unless there's some issue with that. Does anybody have an issue? All right. The first thing we had to do was select the contribution plan. We chose the contribution plan as the KEHP Living Well PPO as the plan contribution. Also, that was for the non-Medicare, and the maximum contribution for the non-Medicare would be the contribution rate would be 100% for 240 months of the year. That would also include the hazardous duty rates. We also have there is a tobacco usage fee in the KEHP plan. I think this fee has been the same since the plan started at $40 for a single, $80 for a couple. And all this remains unchanged for the 2025 plan year. We also recommend the allowance of the consumer-directed health plans, the CDHP, with an embedded HRA. There's also part of the KEHP plan is a living will promise. If you complete the living will promise, you pay the regular rate. If you fail to do so, the next year, so for example, for the 2025 plan year, if you fail to complete the living will promise, then for the 2026 plan year, there will be a $40 service fee added. Then let's see here, what else we got? Like I said, there's a lot of details in this, and if you have any questions along the way, please do not hesitate to ask. The default plan for the which would be for people who fail to complete it during open enrollment. The default plan will be the Living Well Basic CDHP plan. We also recommend that the retirees and beneficiary dependents who did not complete the insurance roll over to the same plan that they were last year, which means if you had the Living Well CDHP plan or the PPO plan, if you do nothing, it will be you'll just roll over in the same plan you had for this year. It's also referred to as a passive enrollment, so that you don't have to take any action, but it's if you wish to keep the same plan as you had this year. The cross-referencing of the retirees, we have recommended that the board continues with this for those employees and members who are eligible for the cross-reference. And one of the newer things that you may not remember, you may remember the legal action is it was regards to Medicare secondary payer plan. We now, if what that is, if a retiree is eligible for Medicare and they're still working or on back to work,
Did Jerry freeze up or is it me?
I think he froze up.
Yeah, I think so too.
Oh.
Jerry's back. You there, Jerry? We lost you for a minute.
This is Connie Pettyjohn. I can take over, or we can wait on Mr. Powell.
Connie, go ahead and take over until his internet clears up, I guess.
Okay, and I just want to mention the cross-reference plan that Mr. Powell just referenced is something that is sunsetting actually after next year. So we will hear more about that, but it's only an option if a retiree selects it this year during open enrollment, or if they roll their plan over and they're on it this year. So that's just a small change that he had mentioned. But also the next plan he was talking about was the Medicare secondary payer plan. This is where we can't offer the retirees that have returned to work with a participating provider a plan where Medicare pays as primary. So what's happened, the legislators allow us to access the Kentucky Employees Health Plan for that special Medicare secondary payer option, which makes the plan pay, Anthem pays primary, and then Medicare will pay secondary. So we have probably about 300 to 400 people take advantage of that benefit. We offer them coverage, and they can get covered, and their dependents can get covered. And this is just something we recommend continuing for that group of retirees. And I believe that's all the decision points he had for the non-Medicare eligible plans offered to the Kentucky Employees Health Plans. Kentucky employee retirees, non-Medicare eligible. And the premiums are the same for next year. Mr. Powell, are you back? I'll let you take it.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure where you left off, so go ahead and finish this section, Connie.
Just that I wanted to mention the premiums are the same as last year. They did not increase because they went out to request for proposal, and Anthem won the bid for the medical TPA with Kentucky Employees Health Plan, which they've been the vendor, I believe, for the past 6 years. So that was really my end point, Mr. Powell. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I don't know what it is. Every time I try to get in one of these meetings, my computer internet connection just goes crazy. So
It's all those acronyms you keep throwing out, Jerry.
I guess what this is that I've been with the retiree health plan for a while now, and I don't even realize it. You know, after talking to Larry and Tracy and Connie, it's almost like breathing, knowing all these acronyms.
It's a different language.
All right, so that is the non-Medicare eligible retirees. Any questions on that? And if not hearing any, then I'll make a recommendation to the board that we accept these recommendations outlined in the board books and as we've discussed here during this meeting.
Okay. Jerry, I think we need to do them individually. So the first one is on the non-Medicare
Yep, the first one would be the establish the living well PPO as the contribution rate.
Okay. Are there any questions, discussion? Got a motion to accept the recommendation from Jerry. Is there a second?
Second.
Got a second? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. The next one, Jerry, is on the Medicare.
The monthly maximum. Oh, were you doing all the KEHP plans in? I'm sorry, not sure I understood. Or were you just doing
I was,
each
yes.
part, each recommendation?
Mr. Powell, maybe that was me. I prepared the draft motion sheet where it would be accepting all the recommendations for the non-Medicare eligible retirees and then accepting all the recommendations that the health plan made for the Medicare retirees. So I just did two motions since the retiree health committee did them all individually.
Right. Okay, then. So let me amend my thing then, that we accept the recommendations from the healthcare committee for the non-Medicare eligible retirees as presented.
Second.
Okay. Sorry, Jerry, I wasn't clear enough when I was trying to touch on that. Let's vote on that again then. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Ayes have it. Now, the Medicare, all the
next one.
Plans, Jerry.
Okay. The next is for the Medicare eligible employees, and this is our Humana our Medicare Advantage plan. Almost got me to do the abbreviations again. In this one, we recommend the Medicare only plan. The premium, which is $191.95, to be set as the monthly contribution rate for plan year 2025. This will be for those retirees with members with 240 months or greater service credit that participated prior to July 1, 2023, is what that will cover. The 100%. The other plans have a different a plan, but they would still. Let me rephrase this. That will establish the $191.95 to be the recommended rate for the medical only plan, and just not keep it simple. Well, we'll go through it and we'll just do it all together. Vicki had done on your motion sheet there. It also recommends the contribution rate for the KPPA premium plan at 100% for the hazard duty spouse or eligible dependent. It approves the KPPA premium plan rate at $141.91, and also recommends the KPPA essential plan rate at this has got to be a favorite for many, to be zero. There will be no. That is, no, it will cost nothing if you are a part of the KPPA essential plan. Cost plan nothing. The committee also recommends the medical only plan and the Medicare Advantage Mirror plan at $341, and the previous one for that was $191, as discussed. There is also a service fee for the dental, which is $529. This would be added to the total for $346.88, and the Medicare Mirror Essential Plan is $202.69 with administrative fee of $529 for a total of $207.98. There's very few people that are in the medical only, and the Mirror plan is exactly the same as the premium, but it's for those who for some reason didn't get into the Medicare and not eligible for the Medicare Advantage supplement. Also, very few people are involved in that. But it is one of the plans, so we do need approval on that. Also, it recommends that the administrative let me try that again. Recommends that the administrative fees continue to be paid for the administration exceptions. And as you look in the board book, they have those exceptions listed. And those with individuals without Medicare Part B can be enrolled in the mirror plan, responsible for paying for the difference between the regular plans and the part and the mirror plans. And lastly, that recommends the default plan for Medicare eligible retirees be the KPP medical only plan. What the default plan is if for some reason nobody doesn't make their determination for their plan, then they ought to be defaulted in the medical only plan, which is kind of a high risk plan basically. So it's not as good as the others, but that's basically what the medical only is. Do you have any questions, or Connie, you got anything you wish to add?
No, just I wanted to point out the medical only plan does not have a drug benefit with it. So that's why there's about 3,000 to 4,000 people in there. They have drug benefits somewhere else like the VA or with their spouse. So it's an option. Around 4,000 people select. The mirror plans, there's about 90 in them. They only go in there when they don't have Part B for some reason. They fail to recognize they have to apply for it is one thing, with Social Security extending the age past 65 now to 66, 67, etc. So that's just two reasons to kind of give them a protection, give them insurance while they're waiting on that option with Medicare.
Jerry, I don't know whether one of y'all address the change for the Medicare eligible as far as the change in the drug benefit and how that's handled or not handled.
Humana might be the best too. You're talking about, Mr. Cheatham, the new the Part D that's happening in 2025. Yes, sir. Humana would probably be better for they're on the call.
Sure, I'd be happy to comment. So for 2025, the KPPA pharmacy benefits are being adjusted to account for the Inflation Reduction Act required changes. The most significant of which is that the true out-of-pocket cost, or the threshold for the maximum that retirees will pay annually for their medications, is going to be $2,000 for 2025. That's a reduction from the current benefit, which is $8,000. So, significantly improved benefit for your retirees with this benefit enhancement. And then another component that some people ask about is the coverage gap, which based on the new enhanced benefit, that coverage gap, while it didn't apply to the majority of your members' pharmacy plan, it is also eliminated going forward into 2025.
Also, Tracy, could you mention the smoothing over the year for your prescriptions?
Sure. Included in the Inflation Reduction Act is an opportunity. It's completely voluntary. At the point of sale, retirees do have the option to enter into a payment plan agreement, not with the pharmacy, but it would be managed through Humana, where instead of paying, maybe they have a $500 copayment. I don't know that your plan would have that. $179 copayment for their 1 month supply. They could choose to pay that out over the year. So it would be a monthly payment that they would pay until they reached their maximum.
Okay.
Thank you. Does that take care of everything, Mr. Cheatham?
Yeah, I just thought people would be interested in knowing how that was going to be handled within their plans. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good point to bring up. All right, that does, unless there is any more questions about the Medicare eligible health plan, hearing none, then I'll make a motion that we accept the recommendations of the Retiree Health Plan Committee as presented for the Medicare eligible retirees.
Okay. We've got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion.
Seconded. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Ayes have it. Jerry, thank you, and I do want to thank you for your work on the healthcare committee. I sat in on your last meeting and got enlightened pretty quickly. I'm gonna have to get your cheat sheet on all the acronyms.
Well, luckily for a lot of it, when you look at the board books, Ms. Garrison, at the end of her presentation, usually has a reference to the different acronyms.
Okay.
So,
Next item on our agenda is from our actuary committee, Chairman Mike Foster. Mike, you want to?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Can everybody hear me? Okay.
Yes, sir.
I want to make sure I was properly unmuted. Thank you. The actuary committee did previously meet, and we received a report and recommendation from GRS concerning the establishment of defined economic assumptions that will be used in determining the upcoming 2024 actuarial evaluation, and the establishment of those economic assumptions are critically important for us to do a good job in making that evaluation. So I think Danny or Janie or both are with us. I'd like for them to walk the full board through your analysis of that issue, and then after their comments and any questions, Mr. Chairman, I'll be prepared to make a motion.
Okay.
Sure. Thank you so much. Yes, we're here today. If we move down a few pages in our board book, we'll look at our letter. So there's three main economic assumptions that we look at when we look at this every year. There are the price inflation assumption, the investment return assumption, and the payroll growth assumption. So kind of on a high level, we're recommending no changes in your economic assumptions this year. And I'll go through each one for you. So we'll start with your price inflation assumption. I think it's maybe 3 pages down. The first graph. Yep, perfect. So really the first thing to note when we talk about your price inflation assumption is this is really just an implicit assumption in your valuation. So it doesn't have a direct impact on your valuation. CERS doesn't have any COLAs that are tied to CPI or anything like that in the benefit provisions. So your price inflation assumption doesn't have a direct impact on your unfunded liability or your contribution rate. So when we talk about your price inflation assumption, this is really just a macroeconomic assumption, kind of that just drives the overall valuation. So it's really not a material assumption that we talk about. But what we will say, obviously all the headlines have been talking about high inflation over the past 2 years. That inflation has been coming down. It's still a little bit above our current assumption of 2.5%. But again, this is a long-term assumption. So we look at forecasters from the various bond market, and we look at the Federal Reserve target, and we do think that 2.5% assumption remains reasonable. If we look at Exhibit 2 here, we'll talk about our investment return assumption. If you'll remember last year, the board changed that investment return assumption to 6.5%. So when we look at your investment return assumption, what we're really doing is we're taking the capital market assumptions from several investment consultants. And so we look at what their expected return is based on your asset allocation. And we're looking at all of those, and we aggregate those together. If we scroll down just a little bit on this chart there, yes. So I will note that these capital market assumptions are from Q4 of last year. So we do look them at the same time each year, year over year, just kind of give us a consistent point that we're looking at each year. So you can see things didn't really change a whole lot since the last time we looked at this assumption. At your short-term expectation around 6.9% and the long-term expectation about 7.2% as an annual return, and looking at about probability of exceeding that 6.5% of about 53% in the short term, 57% in the long term when we look at the investment consultants that use long-term and short-term expectations. So all that being said, we do believe that your 6.5% assumption remains reasonable, and we don't recommend any changes at this time. So this, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Other questions that you may have, Virginia?
Uh, uh, Janie, I think you were going to go into payroll, and
Yeah.
I'm interested in hearing.
Sure. So our final assumption here is our payroll growth assumption. So keep in mind, this again is again your overall payroll growth assumption. So this takes into account how we believe your total covered payroll is to grow in the future. The reason why this is important is because remember you collect contributions on payroll. So when we're paying off that unfunded liability with your contributions, we're essentially assuming that those amortization payments are increasing with that payroll growth assumption. So remember your current payroll growth assumption is 2%. That takes into account two main things. We're looking at increases in your active membership headcount, and we're also looking at increases in the payroll for your current members. So if we kind of look at what we've seen in the last 10 years here, you can see in general your active membership headcount has remained relatively stable for both the non-hazardous and the hazardous plans. And if we look at your payroll we scroll down a little bit there. If we look at your payroll, you can see that we've seen pretty big jumps in your membership payroll over the last 2 years or so. This is actually pretty consistent what we've seen across the nation. We've seen big increases in payroll across the nation, and I think you've heard us talk about this several times when we've come to talk to you about your valuation. The main drivers we see about this is really the recent inflation. We've seen that inflation is really driving this payroll growth. We've seen a lot of the budgets have just had this payroll, and then we also saw that great termination we saw a few years ago. So we see employers trying to keep their members or keep their employees with those payroll increases. So the real question there we have is, are these payroll increases sustainable over the long term? Because that's what that 2% assumption really is. And we don't believe they are. We don't believe that these payroll increases are sustainable over the long term, which is why we believe the 2% payroll increase assumption is one, remains reasonable, but also there's a lot of asymptomatic risk when you talk about your payroll growth assumption. Again, like I said, that's how we collect our contributions. If you have that payroll growth assumption too high, you're talking about really backloading your contributions. So that's something we want to be careful about, which is why we're recommending no change this year. But any questions on that? Any discussion on that assumption?
Janie, Danny, just a question, and it kind of goes to our public comment. As time goes on, and I mean over the next 10, 15, 20 years, what do you anticipate, or what are you all thinking when it comes to payroll growth because of the ability for the tier 3 people to be able to move from job to job and support their retirements? Is that not going to, increase volatility a little bit? Or prop up payrolls? I'm not sure.
Well, there's a few things that go on that come to my mind. The first thing that comes to my mind is hopefully over time that this assumption becomes less material. And what I mean by that, this assumption is just used to find it. The only importance, and it's a big importance right now, is the revenue to finance, or how do you pay down that unfunded liability. So in 10, 15, 20 years, I hope that unfunded liability is much smaller and the funded ratio is bigger, and in which case your cost is smaller, and then this payroll growth assumption becomes less important. You think of it in the totality. If you're exactly 100% funded, it doesn't matter if your payroll growth assumption is 0, 2, or 4. There's no impact in the contribution requirement because there's no one funded. But so that to me, I think, is the overall biggest driver and the biggest concern right now in keeping that at 2%. I think as the tier 1, tier 2 members, you come through with tier 3, you're right, they don't have the same level of benefits? Is there going to be a difference in turnover? How's that going to evolve over the future? I think your guess would be as good as mine, or maybe Janie's got a better crystal ball than I do. But the biggest thing and the most important is as Janie noted, not to have the backloading. And once we get better funded, and when I say better, I'm talking 80-85%, the payroll growth assumption just really becomes less material, almost like your inflation assumption, is not as material right now. So those are my thoughts. Janie, if you have any others?
No, I mean, I agree with you. I think we certainly could see higher termination numbers in the future. How that will drive payroll, it's hard to say. I think a lot of the driving behind the payroll right now is the inflation we've seen. So, we just don't know right now. But like Danny said, I mean, the biggest thing is really that the risk of the backloading and the contributions, which is why we aren't recommending a change in this assumption.
Hey, Janie, is your crystal ball and Danny use the same one, or y'all just share information?
There's some overlap, but I think sometimes they're a little different.
All right, Mike, I think I understood you to have made a motion to accept the recommendation as far as the economic assumptions presented.
That was the unanimous decision, Mr. Chairman, of the actuarial committee, and that's my motion.
Second.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by JT. Any questions or discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion is passed. There's a second item on the actuarial report, Mike, the strategic plan. Do you want to touch on that?
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I'll take that, since we had a special meeting that was part of the investment committee, but it broadly encompassed what we wanted to do with all of the committees in terms of strategic planning. And the actuary committee had put forward strategic planning initiatives that were going to roll into the strategic plan, the overall plan that's being promulgated by KPPA. And so we just listed out as a committee those ideas that we wanted to talk with KPPA about in terms of filling into the buckets that they have for strategic planning. But once we broadened that, we determined that we would have each committee sign off on their own strategic plan, and then it would be rolled up into an overall CERS strategic plan. So the hope would be that there would be a motion to accept what the committee had done, the actuary committee, in terms of its strategic planning initiatives to be rolled into the overall CERS strategic plan, which will be accompanied or stand beside the KPPA strategic plan.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on the items listed within the actuarial committee strategic plan topics? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept those.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Mike, seconded by Jerry. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. we'll move from there on into the investment committee report. Dr. Hackbert couldn't be with us today. He is traveling. So I'm going to briefly step in here and at this point allow Steve and Wilshire to touch on their financial reports for the quarter, and then we'll touch on the one item that we need to approve, the asset allocation ranges following that. So Steve, you want to start us off?
Sure, thank you. Yes, I think Dr. Hackbart's memo did a great job of covering the regularly scheduled meeting that was held on the 28th, and Ed just covered the special meeting that was held on the 15th to discuss the strategic planning process. So I'll highlight a couple of things from the meeting and from Dr. Hackbart's memo regarding the regularly scheduled meeting. So we finished the fiscal year very strongly. In the last quarter of the fiscal year, the pension and insurance composites were both up 1.32% for the quarter compared to the benchmark return of 2.74. And for the fiscal year, a very strong fiscal year, the CERS pension composite produced a return of 11.63, and the CERS insurance composite produced a return of 11.76. So those were very strong in absolute terms. Depending on the universe we look at, I know Wilshire's Tux universe, we have also the PFDE, which is the pension fund data exchange, showed a kind of a median for our peer universe of large public plans up anywhere from 9.5% to 10.5% on average for the fiscal year. So we performed very well from an absolute basis, but I would note that relative to benchmark, we underperformed pretty significantly with a benchmark producing a return of 14.10 for the fiscal year. We spent a lot of time in the investment committee talking about kind of what was driving that underperformance relative to our stated benchmark. And the two primary drivers were, we identified it as the underperformance in the private equity portfolio and the underperformance in the public equity portfolio. And we went in depth at the investment committee meeting discussing kind of what the drivers of those were. For the private equity portfolio, the underperformance relative to the benchmark. So if we're 247 basis points overall relative to the overall benchmark for the year of underperformance, 250 basis points of that was driven by underperformance in that private equity portfolio. And that was really the mismatch we have between a private equity, so our investments in that portfolio, and the public equity benchmark, which is the Russell 3000 plus 3% that we use as the benchmark. So that's a real mismatch, and it's lagged on a quarter as well, that benchmark. So we spent some time discussing that mismatch and in times of divergence in performance, which we saw in private equity investments relative to their public equity counterparts, that was exacerbated over the course of the last several quarters. We spent some time talking about alternatives to that public equity benchmark that I think we might take up in the IPS discussion that is ongoing, what the alternatives are for that. The discussion, and Wilshire can also added that there's not a universally accepted way to benchmark private equity portfolios. I think you'll see a couple of different approaches that we highlighted in the investment committee meeting, some with benefits and drawbacks. I think it's fairly common to use a public equity proxy benchmark such as a Russell 3000. It's easily observable, understandable, and very transparent. The problem it leads to is potentially in the short term, inside of 5 years, certainly over a 1-year period, there can be pretty divergent performance between those two markets, as we've seen. Just for reference, the private equity bench market of investments, on average for the year returned probably anywhere from 4 to 7%. The actual private equity investments, and there was a pretty broad range across different types. As we know, there's venture, there's core, there's private equity. Vintage also plays a big role in the performance of certain portfolios. So that was the most significant driver. We spent some time, Joe Gilbert covered the underperformance of the public equity portfolio. And that really was the result of the narrowness. We've talked about this at both investment committee and board meetings, the narrowness of the market, which was really driven by the mega cap technology stocks, especially on the back of kind of the AI that we're talking about all over the place. So we mentioned that about 70% of the overall performance of the standard S&P index was driven by a handful of stocks, about 7 stocks. So it was very concentrated by those mega cap stocks. And our guidelines and portfolios really require pretty good diversification. And that diversification led to divergence between what the actual public equity portfolio performance was and what the portfolio, the benchmark. It was not unique to CERS. Wilshire commented that we saw this across both active managers. It was a difficult year for them to outperform, as well as in the pension market more broadly, where you tend to see more diversified public equity portfolios, less concentration in those mega cap names. So it was a market where a lot of public equity portfolios across pension plans struggled to keep up with those benchmarks. For the year, core portfolio added 26 basis points, specialty credit added 55, and real return added 34. So that was all outperformance in those portfolios. So if we look at private equity, cost us about 250 relative to benchmark. Public equity, despite returning 17%, our portfolio returning 17% for the year, their attribution of that underperformance relative to the benchmark cost about 115 basis points. So of that 247, obviously all of it was driven by private equity and public equity, and the other asset classes outperformed their specific benchmark. So I thought overall it was a good year. Strong performance on an absolute basis, a little underwhelming relative to the benchmark, but identifiable as to where those drivers of underperformance were. We also talk about the overall attribution of the asset class allocations, and that's really where we're underweight or overweight. And for the year, total performance attributable to asset allocation was pretty negligible, with underweights to real return and real estate were positive for the portfolio, and overweights to cash. And that overweight is relative to an unrealistic 0% target, which we've updated in the most recent IPS. So that overweight to cash, anything above 0, and the overweight to specialty credit, which was really where we were using as a proxy asset class for real return, were both negative contributors to relative performance. We also talked about July performance, which was recently finalized and released. The portfolios are off to a strong start in the new fiscal year, up between 162 and 167 basis points for the month, outperforming the benchmarks by 65 basis points. We noted that public equity portfolio outperformed in the month and made up some of that ground that was lost in the last quarter of the last fiscal year, returning 2.33% for the month compared to the benchmark return of 1.61. August performance is still very preliminary, but the portfolios had another strong month and looked to be up about 150 basis points. A couple of other things I wanted to highlight. If we could turn to page 113, please. Something we talk about in depth a lot, and that's on a relative basis. Given the asset allocation, we tend to have a little bit of a lower risk profile compared to peers. All of the portfolios produce top quartile risk-adjusted performance for the last fiscal year, and have continued to deliver top decile risk-adjusted performance over longer periods. We really think that demonstrates the efficiency of the construction of the portfolio and the management of the underlying asset allocations. Page 121, please. Thank you. As of the end of the fiscal year, a total of 12 asset class categories were outside of their specified IPS ranges, and that was across all pension and insurance portfolios. Just wanted to provide an update. As of last Friday, and this is using the new ranges that we're going to talk about in a second, only the real return asset class for the insurance portfolios is outside of the allowable range. So we've gone from 12 to 3. And those are modestly under their specified range. So they're sitting right about 3.6% allocation compared to the lower limit of 4%. But we expect managers will be calling additional committed capital over the next few months. And staff will be presenting a real return investment recommendation at the specially called IC on the 17th. So we would anticipate that that the weighting under the allowable range would be corrected within the next probably 2 to 3 months, assuming capital gets called and that the recommendation at the 17th is approved and ratified. Page 139, please. We also touched on the budget for the year. For the full fiscal year, investment fees and expenses were $34.7 million, more than for fiscal 2023, but $28 million less than in fiscal 2022 and in line with fiscal 2021. Really at a high level, focusing just on the investment advisory fees, which are the contracted fee rate for all of our asset classes. Those base fees the system pays to external investment managers. I did note the consistency across time with only a 13% increase in fees since 2021, despite a 20% increase in total assets. So that's an area that we work hard, is keeping the fees down, keeping institutional quality asset management at the lowest possible fee rates. As the table shows, there's been significant volatility in performance-based fees across asset classes, especially in those alternative asset classes, which are more heavily skewed towards variable performance-based fees, such as specialty credit, private equity, and real estate. We also noted that we have seen a sharp rise in the miscellaneous expenses over the last year. And that's really for strategies that rely on credit facilities as part of their mandate. And that's given the, as we all are aware, the significant rise in front-end rates. So, typically those credit facilities were based on LIBOR, they're now SOFR based. So with the increase in short-term rates, the cost of those credit facilities has risen pretty sharply. I also wanted to highlight the reduction in core fixed income advisory fees. So for the fiscal year, it was a reduction of $350,000. And that's despite a 25% increase in the market value. That was driven by the rebalance of the portfolio that was executed during the fiscal year, which included bringing a sleeve of the portfolio in-house, which ultimately we expect to reduce fees for that asset class by about $1.2 to $2 million per year. Page 142, please, Sherry. Thank you. We also noted that the effective rate of investment management fees for CERS and CERS hazard pension portfolios are about 31 basis points. And what that is core fixed income is about 7, public equity 16, specialty credit 56, real estate 84, real return 76, private equity 56. When we include performance management fees, it results in an effective fee rate of about 51 basis points. We did note there was a difference, obviously, at the individual CERS portfolio level and the overall pension or insurance composite level, which includes the K and SPRS portfolios. And the difference between both the overall effective rate as well as the effective rated individual asset classifications, that's driven by both the composition of those asset classes, so how much of specific mandates one portfolio has versus another, as well as the overall difference in asset allocations. The C portfolios for the balance of the year had higher public equity allocation than the K portfolios or the SPRS portfolios, and a lower allocation to that core fixed income, which is obviously the lowest fee rate of all of our asset classes. So those are the comments I had. Mr. Cheatham, I don't know if you wanted to move to page 148, which is the asset allocation range discussion. Happy to take any questions as well.
Yeah, anybody have a question on the performance or investment budget? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on down into the asset allocation range. As you probably recall, the investment committee is in the process of revising its investment policy statement. At one of the previous meetings, we adjusted the overall target asset allocation ranges. The next step of that is to put in place basically rails on either side of that target range. Each asset class, you'll find that in front of you there. For example, the equity target is 45%. The ranges that we are recommending are a minimum of 30 and a maximum of 55. And you can see the same numbers for each of the other asset classes down through there. Steve, I don't know if you want to address any of that. I know David probably does. The other folks from Wilshire.
Yeah, I'll add a couple of quick comments and then hand it over to Wilshire. Obviously, this was we revised the targets, so the targets were revised, but we held off on adjusting the ranges as part of a broader IPS discussion, as Mr. Cheatham mentioned. I think we're still in the process of the draft and the revisions to the IPS, so we thought that it made sense to go ahead and bring the ranges before the investment committee, which was approved, and bring to the board for ratification. A couple of things to note on here. This follows discussion, the lengthy discussion we had on the asset allocation. As we remember, that asset allocation process was multi-meetings, over the course of a couple of different quarters. A very beneficial discussion for staff, and part of what a takeaway from that is you see we've historically had more symmetry around targets, so the range around a target was symmetrical. As you'll notice on a number of these, there's asymmetry around especially the public equities and fixed income. And that really is, if we look at the core fixed income, why are we've got a higher range on one side than the downside. That's really, that's the ballast. That's also a big part of our, what we would consider the liquidity component of the portfolio. So we wanted to keep a pretty tight threshold on the downside so we don't fall below what we're comfortable with from a liquidity standpoint or from kind of that safety and ballast. So that's really our core component of the overall asset allocation. Bigger upside there. Part of the thinking is that, in times of stress, core fixed income is one of the areas where we may increase an allocation to de-risk a portfolio. It's a liquid market. It's one that tends to have less sensitivity in times of stress. And as we're aware, a lot of times we see public equity markets go down. You'll see fixed income markets go up from a price standpoint. So that's kind of a safety bucket. We wanted a higher side on that. You notice on the specialty credit, given that 20% target allocation, this was a lot of the discussion in the early asset allocation meetings that we had. There's pretty tight bounds on that, kind of the 4% on either side of the target. And that is really a comfort level with the investment committee as far as, how much utilization of that range we would actually anticipate using. That was the asset allocation target that was increased most significantly in the most recent IPS target changes. So keeping a tight bound on how much upside or downside relative to that target discretion that the staff's going to have to manage around. And then on public equities, we have a 15% on the downside, 10% on the upside. Really, that's kind of to control, as Wilshire will talk about, achieving that assumed rate of return, maintaining the risk in the portfolio, while increasing the probability of achieving what those target returns are for the portfolio. So that's a way to control risk, and we think these are prudent ranges. We'll see on most of them they're fairly tight around that target. So we don't want to have them so tight that it forces rebalancing, especially in illiquid markets. So we don't want market moves to force us into in those alternative classes where it's difficult to quickly move targets or asset allocations to be forced into that. So we keep something around those ranges that allows for both positioning standpoint as well as market moves. So Wilshire, I'll have you comment there as well.
Sure. Steve, thanks. And Chris is going to comment in just a second about some of the risk tolerances around the bands, but I just wanted to say Steve outlined it really thoroughly. Not a lot to add there, but just the issues you talked about, Steve, with places for symmetry, places for asymmetry, and reasons for that, and being able to have downside protection sort of locked in on things like core fixed income, and then the ability to increase that in times of stress as well. So there's been a lot of thought and reasoning that's been put into each one of these. Steve outlined them well. Chris, I think you want to make a couple of comments about risk tolerance.
Yeah. first off, Steve, really nice job covering all the points there. And we really did want to make the point here that the asymmetry around public equity and core fixed income was put in place to make sure that we are making sure that we are putting in the guidelines or the boundaries, if you will, to maintain the risk profile that both the investment committee and the board really kind of expressed through the passing of the new asset allocation. So if we think about what core fixed income is, it is the ballast to the portfolio. We wanted to make sure we had a floor on that particular asset class. And similarly on public equity, having a maximum at 55%. And if you think about what these rebalancing range really do, just from an equity standpoint, when markets do run the way they have over the past year, it forces you to be a seller at the increased prices. So it forces you to harvest those gains, those positive returns. On the flip side, when there is a market downturn, having that minimum, it does force you to rebalance back into equities when you have depressed prices in equity markets. So again, just want to reiterate, this really does give you a good risk tolerance, and it is going to ensure that we're maintaining the risk tolerance of the board by having these boundaries put in place.
Thank you.
Mr. Cheatham, you're muted.
Sorry. Anybody have any questions for either Steve or Wilshire? Not, I'll entertain a motion to accept the investment committee's recommendation to accept the ranges on the asset allocations as presented.
And Mr. Cheatham, I just want to put one other point out there, is that we are looking to make sure that these are put in as of July 1st, 2024.
Okay, good point. Thank you. Somebody want to make that motion to accept retroactive to January 1st of 2024?
So moved.
Motion by Jerry, second by, did I hear Dr. Carver a second ago?
Yes.
Okay, by Dr. Carver. Any other questions?
Just a clarification, Mr. Cheatham, I think you just said January 1st, not July 1st.
Yes, I'm sorry, July 1st. Okay, with that adjustment, I've got a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
All right. We'll move from there on into the Finance Committee report. Again, our Finance Committee Chairman, Bill O'Meara, is not with us today. I'm going to turn over the presentation of the financial reports to Mike Lamb. Mike, if you want to run through the highlights, and if anybody has questions, feel free to ask them.
Thank you, Mr. Cheatham. Starting on page 151, I wanted to first touch base on the new look of the financial statements. We're going to two ACFRs, one for the CERS system and one for the KRS system. So we're beginning to transition the presentation of the quarterly financial statements as well. So instead of seeing a set of pension financials and a set of insurance financials, you're going to see combined pension and insurance with a CERS total. And that's what you see in front of you today. Our external audit firm will give an opinion on the CERS total for all of those systems. The one thing that's going to look different in the ACFR is that comparative column for 2023 will not be in this year's ACFR. Because this is the first year we're doing CERS all by itself, we don't really have audited numbers from 2023. So the quarterly statements will still show a comparative number, but this first year ACFR will not. I've given lots of highlights in the Finance Committee, but I'll touch base on a couple of them here, not to be redundant. Sure, if you page down one more page. Well, I'm sorry. Stay at the bottom of that page 151, and you'll see that the total net fiduciary position for fiscal year 2024 is 18.4 billion, and that's 10.35% higher than the prior year amount of 16.7 billion. The two pension plans themselves, the 9.7 and the 3.4, total 13.1 billion, and that's up 11.15%. And the two insurance plans total 5.3 billion. There are various notes throughout the financial statement there that you're welcome to read that continue on to the next page. Then the next financial statement is the combining financial statement for fiduciary net, for changes in fiduciary net position. We've made further changes to this since the publication of this for the board meeting. Some of these line items are going to be combined into member contributions and employer contributions, and so this statement is going to get a little bit smaller for the ACFR. But again, if you look near the bottom of page 154, you'll see that there is the changes. There's a 10.53% increase from the prior statement that flows through here, and that is the fiduciary net position is reflected near the middle of that. It's 19% higher, or 277 million higher than the prior year amount of 1.455. So that 1.7 that's there is from the prior financial statement. So showing that we had a good year. The two pension plans are 936 million and 384 million for a total of 1.3 billion, and that's also 27.2% higher than the prior year's amount. The contribution statements look very similar to how they always have. And if you look at the net contributions for fiscal year 24, they're 151 million for the non-hazardous plan. The hazardous plan is 106.3 million. And for the insurance ones, minus 2.4 million and minus 29.8 million for fiscal year 24. The cash flow analysis at the bottom of both of those charts show that if you remove the net investment income from the non-hazardous pension plan, we'd have negative cash flow of 66.4 million. We would still have positive cash flow of 28.4 million for the hazardous system, and the two insurance plans would be negative cash flow. Again, that's because they're more funded and we have less employer and other contributions coming in related to that funding status. The next thing I'm going to touch on, I'm going to skip the invoices for a minute because we have a larger topic on that later. I'm going to touch base on this admin budget. This is the high-level summary of all of the admin costs for the fiscal year. I have notes in there about the major categories: personnel, legal, auditing, actuarial, and operational. What I'd like to do is drop all the way down to near the bottom of page, I believe it's 158. Right there would be perfect, Sherry. So this subtotal is basically the total costs prior to the reserve, and our total for the year is $44.1 million. That was $1.4 million below budget, meaning we did not need to spend any of the $4.8 million that was in the unallocated reserve. Overall, our admin costs for this fiscal year were 7.71% higher than the prior year, or $3.1 million. That initial hybrid allocation chart right below that shows how those costs were allocated prior to year-end adjustments. And if you look at the chart below that, we've taken that 44.1 million that was allocated among the 5 pension plans. It shows you how they were reallocated based on plan-specific adjustments as well as separation adjustments that were required by statute. And then the bottom gray line shows you the total charge of admin expenses to each of the pension plans. So CERS non-hazardous got 26 million, hazardous got 2.3 million out of that $44 million of admin costs. This was the last year of separation costs to be paid by the C system. So next year we will not have the separation expense line item allocated to the C plans. Charts below that are the JP Morgan Chase charts that shows us our fees for the months so far in the fiscal year, the entire fiscal year of 2024, as well as, since we changed those accounts to hard dollar interest, for the most part. All of those accounts earned interest, and that's the allocation of those interests to those individual accounts. Mr. Cheatham, what I'd like to do, the next slide is outstanding invoices, but my next topic is also outstanding invoices. This chart right here on 160 again is the quarterly chart that we show the outstanding by type and the outstanding by employer. And then we also, the next chart shows you what was created during the quarter related to monthly reporting that was late, what was waived, and what was paid. And I'll just leave those at that until we get into my next topic after the hazardous duty part of the Finance Committee.
Okay. Well, if you'll sit on hold there, we'll move on into the hazardous duty. Juan, you want to pick up there?
Yes, I will. Good afternoon. Today we have 16 positions being requested for hazardous duty coverage. All the positions today are police and fire positions. KPPA staff has reviewed the position questionnaires and job descriptions for all these positions, and they do meet the statutory guidelines for hazardous duty. In addition, the CERS Finance Committee did approve these positions to be presented in front of the CERS Board of Trustees for final approval. If anyone has any questions about the positions, please let me know. If not, then KPPA recommends the board approve these positions for hazardous duty coverage.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to accept that recommendation from someone?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion by JT, second by Jerry. Any questions for Juan with regard to any of these positions requesting hazardous duty? Not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Okay. Mike?
Thank you. Before I move on to this, were there any questions on the financial statements before we get into this employer invoice memo? Okay, so this is a draft memo that is being prepared for presentation to the KPPA full board. However, it initiated with the Finance Committee of the C Board. And basically, we had a question back in 2023 about all of the past due invoices that exist and what do we have the ability to charge interest to, and are we doing so? And so we formed a team. Part of that team was KPPA Legal. They did extensive research on our statutory authority to charge interest on employer contributions that are delinquent, or there's various other categories that that are mentioned in statute. Our legal team divided this into 8 different categories, and we have various statutory authority to charge interest on some of these invoices in this category, especially when they're first initiated. However, once that interest invoice is initiated, there's very little statutory authority that allows the KPPA to charge interest on the past due invoice that was created related to that employer contribution. The one exception that stands out is employer pension spiking. So the employer's pension spiking category allows us to charge interest on the spiked amount, as well as compound that interest every month, and KPPA currently does that. However, in most of these other categories, once we create that employer invoice and the related interest related to that invoice, once it becomes past due, we don't have a lot of authority to charge interest on the interest invoice, so to speak. And so we're going to try to make some recommendations to the KPPA board, and I've summarized them by category on that page 164, really high level. Below page 164 and 65, there's in the appendix a lot of detail as to why we are concluding and making the recommendation that we are recommending to the KPPA board. So for example, one of the more complicated ones is category 1, which is the standard monthly reporting. And so we have the statutory authority to charge interest to most of the CERS employers and some KERS employers when they fail to report their contributions and pay their contributions by the 10th of the following month. And so when that happens, we do calculate an interest and we invoice the employer for doing that. That's what's presented in the quarterly meeting and the charts right before this that showed how many monthly reporting interest invoices were created. We do have a policy that allows us to waive those for various reasons. And the one thing that the statute does allow us to do that we're recommending we do not do is if that employer invoice failed to report that monthly invoice for multiple months, or their monthly contributions for multiple months, we could charge that penalty or that interest on that past due amount for each month that they're late. We decided not to recommend that because most of the large employers that pay late do pay their past due invoices and they pay their penalty invoices timely. It's the smaller employers that get charged the minimum $1,000 that continue to be late and have a hard time catching up and sometimes go multiple months before they can get their monthly reports in and balanced. And so we felt that that would be a punishment to those smaller employers that have a hard time paying the $1,000 minimum anyway. And so as part of this analysis in the appendix for number 1, we recommended that we just continue to do what we've been doing, charging for 1 month and allowing waivers when appropriate. That was the one that had the most detail in the appendix. And Sherry, if you want to just quickly jump to page, I don't know exactly what page it's on, maybe 170 maybe. Nope, a little bit higher up than that one. 168. So this shows you the penalty invoices that are still outstanding as of July 31. Or maybe as of 6/30, I can't remember if I updated it or not. But there's $302,000 that is outstanding. It's 302 invoices. But if you look, even this Elliott County ambulance, they have 41 invoices past due at $41,000. So we only charged them for the 1 month that they were past due. They had several months that were past due, and if we had charged them for every month that they were past due, that number would be larger, of course, but it would still be very difficult for them to pay. So as you can see, most of these are smaller employers making up that. So that's why our recommendation stayed there. I would be happy to go through any of these 8 categories, discuss them with you, take questions on them, give you an analysis of why we concluded the way we concluded. Again, this memo is still in draft, so it's subject to change, and some of your comments that you asked today may help us change that if you feel like it needs to be. So let me stop there and ask for questions.
Mike, I guess the first question I would have, and I understand your reasoning on some of these, I'm probably missing a little bit of information that would sway me one way or the other, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. Going back to that list of outstanding penalty invoices or what have you. And I'm going back and I'm trying to bring information in from the joint audit committee meeting the other day, which, you may, if Kristen's on here, she may want to touch on. I would be interested in seeing the age of some of this outstanding debt. I can't remember the number. Kristen may have it right at her fingertips, but the average age on some of this stuff was well over 200 and some odd days, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, you are correct. Some of these invoices are extremely old. Some of them go back greater than 4 years, and I did get an update from internal audit this morning, actually, with that chart. And if you give me just a second, I could give you a number of the average days outstanding invoice related to these. So I'm going to go to, so the penalty invoices themselves. So this is maybe as of today, maybe as of 9/2, I think this file that Kristen did for us. There's 321,000 past due. It's 321 invoices, and the average days past due is 1,138. So there are lots of invoices that are aged quite a bit. What we hope to do as part of this team is maybe form a group to look at these categories of invoices now and then determine what to do with them. Do we approach the employers for collection? Do we bring some of this back to the board for maybe a bad debt write-off and waive them for whatever reason? And so that's kind of our next steps that we've talked about internally, but that hasn't been formulated yet.
The numbers that you just quoted, does that include the ones that are currently involved in litigation?
It does, and I don't have the breakout of the penalty invoices themselves that are in litigation. But if one of those employers listed in front of you are in litigation, likely their penalty invoices are. But again, most of these are smaller employers that just need some work from our side to collect on them or do something else about them.
Yeah, maybe this part of the conversation may be better suited for our closed session when we get into that.
Absolutely, yeah. Some of this may require closed session discussions as well.
Yeah, just for everybody's clarification, all this report is just simply the penalty invoices, not whatever they may be owe us as far as contributions that haven't been made, correct?
Yes, but so these penalty invoices, from my research, I've determined that in most cases, the contributions related to those penalty invoices have been paid and collected by KPPA. So, if you take one of those employers, say maybe Clay County Fiscal Court, I don't know for sure, but they maybe have $17,000 of penalty invoices still out there, but all of the contributions related to what generated that penalty invoice have been collected. So we have very few, and I think I put that in my memo, outstanding. If you look right below all of this chart, there's a monthly reporting invoice, and I put some numbers in there as of 7/31. So that's the contributions that are still past due, and most of them do not relate to these penalty invoices that are still outstanding.
Okay. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. These penalty invoices at some point at the beginning of them being generated, I'm assuming went through a review process as to whether they should be forgiven or not. And for whatever reason, they were determined not to be eligible for forgiveness.
Correct. That is correct.
They've in essence been through that first line of appeal, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have questions about this? I think Jerry's right. I think there's, probably some legal discussion that needs to be had on some of these anyway. But I would, Kristen, if you can, your internal audit on this issue, if you could send copies of that to all the C trustees, I think they would find it very informative as well. Might help us in, further discussion on this issue.
We will. Our plan is to send that out. We sent it to Mike and Juan this morning to have them identify the ones that were in litigation so we could take that into account in our analysis before we sent it out. But we will send it as soon as we have that piece of it.
If my memory serves, which a lot of times it doesn't, there was something in the neighborhood of a total for all systems of just over 9 million out there. Does that sound correct?
Yeah, it's close to
Yes.
$10 million in total past due invoices. A large portion of that is the KERS AALC amount for one particular employer that's in litigation, and that's about 4.5 million. So throwing that one employer out, you have 5 or 6 million past due total. Yes.
Yeah, and I think part of that discussion in audit committee was we figured the total to the C system was somewhere between 4 and 5 million. Does that sound correct, Kristen?
That does sound correct. I know we have it broken out by system on that report. What I'll do is I'll go ahead and send the C members the report that we sent this morning. And then when we get the litigation piece added, I'll send a revised copy.
That's fine. I appreciate that. Okay. Is there anything, I think we took care of anything that we needed to vote on from the Finance Committee. Anybody have questions for Mike on this topic? If not, I think we need to move on to the next item, which is closed session. I need a motion to enter into a closed session pursuant to KRS 61.810C to discuss pending litigation. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A motion by Jerry. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
A second by Mike. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Ayes have it. Philip, if you don't mind to take us off Facebook for a little bit, and we'll go into executive session.